You know, much has been done to improve the quality of education here in New Jersey in the past few years. For example, the passage of the landmark Teach NJ Act, which, among other things, modernized how teachers are evaluated and rewarded. But what remains to be done, and how do we do it? Joining us now to answer these and other questions are Janellen Duffy, Executive Director of JerseyCAN, and Ann Borowiec, Co-Chair of the Board of JerseyCAN. Welcome.
Great to have
you guys here. First of all, Janellen, what is JerseyCAN?
Sure. JerseyCAN is a nonprofit organization focused on education advocacy. We've been focused in our first year on really building up research and policy tools to get the word out about what's happening in education in New Jersey, both in terms of trends and policy changes. And in future years, we'll be focused on advocating for state-level policy changes that are based on research and grounded in best practices as well.
And concrete example, two biggest policy changes you're looking to move forward on are?
I think we want to see expectations raised, so that would be standards and Common Core being adopted on time here in the state. And the second would be continuation of the bar rising on our teachers, and that's supporting them with professional development and feedback, so we raise the bar on both sides.
So you guys are working hard to make sure that what I mentioned, Teach NJ, the landmark, I mean, it was passed unanimously, right, in both houses, that it gets implemented as it was supposed to be and done right. Is everything going all right? Is it going as scheduled with Teach NJ, or has it met obstacles?
It's been a pretty successful first year of implementation, as we talked about in a recent issue brief that we just published. But I think we've got to continue to make sure that the supports are in place to help teachers, as Ann mentioned, professional development, that real robust professional development is there as teachers are being evaluated, and they get feedback so they can make the changes that they need to make.
But let's break it right down. Coming out of this, the segment we just saw was a tape segment with Wendell Steinhauer, the president of the NJEA, down in Atlantic City at their convention. The NJEA on board?
Well, the NJEA was certainly on board with the Teach NJ bill that was passed.
When it was passed.
Are they on board with what it is? I'm sorry for interrupting, Raf. Are they on board with what you're trying to do in terms of, as you say, raising the bar for teacher performance? Are they on board in terms of the other initiatives?
I do think they want to see better outcomes, but I also think that they would initially point to the fact that the scores for New Jersey at a top level look actually very strong. Yeah. And so what we would say is you need to look behind those numbers and identify there's two big issues. One is that we have one of the worst achievement gaps in the whole country.
What does that mean?
That means that the education that our students of color or urban environments,
or low income,
low income, are well below what our suburbs and our white students are seeing, and that's really unacceptable. When they graduate, they're 3 or 4 grade levels behind where the other students are, and that's really just not acceptable.
Well, some of the things, I mean, I think both Steve and I are wondering about what you're doing with Teach NJ Act, because we read your report, and it seems like there are some obstacles that some people want to postpone it from what we're here.
Sure. Yeah. Yep. We did talk about that. There have been folks who have called to slow down the implementation of the teacher evaluation system. You know, they just argue it's too much change too fast.
And you say?
You say it's too slow a change.
We think that the state put a pilot program in place going back 3 years ago and ramped it up very slowly and learned lessons from that pilot program that are now informing the full-blown evaluation or implementation. So there's already been a lot of groundwork.
And there's something else in this report that, again, I want to mention that because you guys brought it up here, which is that there's an element in Teach NJ that didn't make it into it that I think you guys are advocating for, and that is that layoffs be determined by merit, not by seniority. How far are you getting into that?
Layoffs of teachers.
Teachers, right,
well,
of course.
I would first clarify by saying that we're not opposed to seniority as a concept, but the fact that performance and outcomes are not included in the process is definitely not in the best interest of kids.
And so when you argue that, just to be clear, going back to the NJEA, the New Jersey Education Association, when you say, look, that a teacher being let go should be the product of a variety of factors, and some of those need to include
student performance, growth in student performance.
Are you saying that the New Jersey Education Association says yes? Where do we sign up?
I think if your mandate is to protect your members, seniority is probably the easiest sell. And so I understand where they're coming from, but if you focus on best outcome for kids, you need to actually include performance.
So you're saying that you don't believe, are they mutually exclusive? Are they mutually exclusive for the teachers union to support their members and also be advocates for what is best for children?
Well, I think there can be conflicts there, and you can argue, you know, which is the best way to go, but there is a middle ground here.
Right, right. I mean, certainly we're not here to speak on behalf of the NJEA. You'll talk with them, but
I'm asking, but you're engaging them.
Sure. So what we would say with respect to this layoff issue is that when districts are in a position where they have to do layoffs
because of finances.
Because of finances, right? Which we're seeing in certain districts across the state.
Absolutely.
That superintendents are asking for the flexibility to make those layoff decisions based on both performance and other factors, which could include seniority.
And what would allow them to do that? Are we talking about legislation that is required?
It would be a legislative change.
And the legislation would say that a school superintendent would now have the legal authority to let teachers go based on a variety of variables, one of those being student performance.
Or growth in student performance.
Growth, exactly.
And where do you feel most legislators are on this issue?
Well, it was in the original drafts of the bill, and I think it got cut out at the very end, honestly.
And to what degree do you think that has to do with the political will or lack thereof in the State House?
Well, we weren't there. We weren't at the table at the time, and so. So, I mean, clearly this is a very dicey political issue, but nonetheless, one that we felt compelled to bring up because, again, you want that superintendent as a head of a district to make the best decisions when they're faced with very difficult situations around layoffs to be able to factor in performance.
Well, I'm sorry, we only have a few seconds left, so it's 30 seconds exactly just been told. What is one thing that you can do, that we can do right away to reach that gap? To breach that gap.
Sure. So as Jan mentioned, there may be some places where we're on one side of an issue and the NJEA is on another. There are actually some things.
Just one thing.
One thing. There's a residency requirement. It's not related to Teach NJ. There's a residency requirement that all teachers and school leadership staff have to live in New Jersey. That's an issue for both NJEA and us.
And you agree?
Right.
And we absolutely agree.
Okay,
yes,
so there's hope.
exactly.
On that note,
All right, we have to go. So that's it for this edition of NJ Capital Report. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.